Hey, Gadiel, how many lawyers jokes are out there?
About 1,000.
Nope. Only 3, because the rest are true stories.
Oh.
Kind of hurt, didn't it? So we're sitting here looking at lawyer jokes, and I got to tell you, I'm a little flabbergasted with these jokes, because I've heard good ones, but these are just hurtful.
Some are actually good, but yeah, some of them.
I mean, most of these talk about lawyers hanging from trees, and this one says something about that the sharks don't bite lawyers because of a professional courtesy. I mean, man, I don't know. I think I went to the wrong website. These are just brutal. I'm cool with lawyer jokes, but these are slightly offensive. But anyway, so welcome to yet another episode of the ULF podcast. We're still going to come up with a cooler name than that. I'm Michael Urbina.
I'm Gadiel Rosario.
And we want to talk today about lawyers. Is it a blessing or a curse to have a lawyer? And based on this website, I'm starting to think that we're going to start on the curse side because, Lord, whoever came up with these really hate lawyers, I mean, it's brutal. I'm going to get out of this before I get all depressed. So the reason why we want to talk about lawyers today is because obviously a lot of times the questions we get is, do I need a lawyer? And that's not something we can really answer for you because the reality is that in a lot of situations, as a lawyer, I'm going to think you do. Now, you might think that, oh, well, of course, a lawyer is going to say that because they want to get hired and this and that. You might think that, but not necessarily. I think there's a lot of things that, I would tell you if you really didn't need a lawyer for that. But a lot of times when it deals with court, my recommendation is that you do take a lawyer because I've seen people mess up on speeding citations in court and all of a sudden their situation becomes 10 times worse just because they said the wrong thing or tried to do the wrong thing or went in there with an idea thinking I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And the reality is that that's not how things work. So, I always use the connotation that if you have a problem with your car or if your dog is sick, you're not going to take them to, an eye doctor. You're going to take your car to a mechanic and you're going to take your dog to a vet. Same thing with lawyers. That's the whole reason of our job, to make sure that we can provide you with a service so that your situation gets better. I get it. There's a lot of bad lawyers out there, but there's also a lot of bad doctors. There's also a lot of bad vets. There's a lot of bad mechanics. I mean, a lot. But, lawyers just seem worse just because of the outrageousness, I guess, of some of those situations when there's like a prestige involved with, oh, he's a lawyer, this and that. And then you see some of these jokesters out there that are doing some crazy things. And then that's why I think there's a little more animosity towards us.
So basically what you're saying is when you find a good attorney, keep him.
Yes.
Keep him forever. And on that note, I always respect a lot this solicitor from a nearby municipal court when he speaks to the people that are there for the attending court, their court hearing. He makes an example of like, hey, you have a family doctor, you have a family psychologist, for example, or a family dentist. You should also have a family attorney. Because you never know when you're going to need legal advice from somebody that you can trust. And he says it that way, and it totally makes sense. Because, for example, you may need some type of advice on your business, for example, or you were in a car accident and maybe there was no lawsuit filed, but you want to know, if it happens, how you should act, how you should respond, or God forbids, your child or some close family friend has a run-in with the police or some criminal case or something. You need, that's not the time to start searching for an attorney. You should already have one that also has your trust. I remember my father, he's not an attorney, but he had an attorney. He had an office and he had an attorney, and he asked all of the questions to him. He did from our deeds when he purchased properties to issues with employees of the office, even divorces. I'm just joking. My parents didn't divorce, but it's something that you need somebody to, that can hear your problems and be aware of what you're going through, and just get a professional advice. It's like a friend, but who knows what they're talking about.
By the way, I totally got distracted there, and I kept nodding. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, wait, divorce?
Yeah.
I did not realize.
and another thing, maybe you go to court without an attorney, and the judge makes you get an attorney.
Right. Either because you're going to go to the public defender or get a private attorney.
Exactly.
So a lot of times when we tell you that you need to get an attorney, it doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, I'm looking for you to hire me. You can hire anybody else that you think is trustworthy, or if it's a criminal case where you're facing jail time, then absolutely. If you can't afford one, then go talk to the public defender, because, a lot of times the public defenders go through the same thing. Like, there's a stigma about public defenders, this and that. I mean, some of the most, scarred, like battle scarred or battle tested attorneys are actually public defenders, because they fight through so much adversity, and their clients are not necessarily paying. Like, it's just a completely different environment. So a public defender is definitely better than you trying to represent yourself. And there's nothing worse than seeing someone that thinks they're above the law or smarter than the cop or smarter than everybody else, and then they go to court trying to pull some trick, and then they immediately realize that said trick is not going to work, and it just blows up in their face. I mean, that is the worst. It's entertaining, but it's the worst thing to see, because you see somebody that, due to their pride or their apparently absolute despise for lawyers, they completely, regret their intention or their idea immediately, The same way, though, I'm with you. I understand that, you always got to have that one person that you can trust with regards to asking for advice, especially like you have a family doctor, you have a family accountant, you have a family this, you have family that. It's good to have a lawyer that you can be like, hey, maybe you don't do this kind of work, but I would like to know if you know somebody else that can help me with this kind of situation. It's becoming more rare of having a firm that handles everything, unless you go to a really, really, really large firm. So most firms are focused on like 1, 2, maybe 3 areas of law. But anything else above that is usually going to be a much, much larger firm. So you want to look for somebody that's more specialized, more focused in particular areas of law, because the law evolves over time, and it's not like it was back, 50, 60 years ago, that the codes were pretty short and there was not as much case law. And, you could be like a master of all. You could do everything. You could do immigration. You could do real estate. You could do this. You could do that. But now, I mean, the lawyers that you do see that do too much, like do way too many areas of law, generally are not that good at, any of them. They're like quasi good at this, quasi good at that, terrible at the other ones. Like, you have to be able to pick out what your strengths are or what your areas of focus or interest are, which is why you want to find someone that's more specialized in what you need. So it's okay to start out with someone you trust, so that person can then refer to you to someone that you trust, Now let's talk about, we've talked obviously from our point of view, how we see that, lawyers are a blessing. So let's talk about the fact of curse, and I'm not talking about curse words. I'm just talking about how a lawyer can really be a problem in your life. From my standpoint, I think the worst part, where really lawyers get a bad rap is that sometimes they get too money hungry, and then they start being dishonest with people with regards to trying to find a case where there is no case, and I've always, try to be really, really, really sometimes brutally clear with people about their chances on things, just to make sure that, look, I'm being as crystal clear as I can possibly be, so you can understand all your situation. And sometimes I tell them that, and they're still like, no, we want to go forward. I'm like, okay, then you know what? I don't want to take your case, because I feel like either A, you don't understand me, or B, you really don't understand how difficult your situation is, where I might not be able to help you. And I don't want to take someone's money if I don't think I can help them in one way, shape, or form, depending on their goals, So I think a lot of times people focus too much on what they read or what they hear from other people rather than from your sense. When you go to a store and you get a salesman that approaches you, you always get that sense whether that person is a person that you feel like you can trust, or that they seem nice or something like that. There's always that first impression, right? And I think there has to be that certain level of common sense with people when they meet with lawyers. regardless of whatever their knowledge is, you want to see how they express themselves to you. Because they can't express themselves to you correctly, how are they going to express themselves to court? Like how do they argue? How are they going to argue in court? That to me is one of the things you got to look for before you find yourself with a curse in that sense. The other thing is, look around you with regards to the office. It doesn't have to be like an office with marble floors or anything like that. But if you're meeting with a lawyer and you're sitting in the trunk of his car parked in some parking lot talking about his case, and he says, oh, just step into my office, that's a huge red flag. Why does this guy not have an office? Why are we sitting in his trunk? Is he going to leave me in this trunk? Like, I don't know. Like, those are the things you got to think about before you start making, perceptions of lawyers that are, on you. So if you have a situation like that and you don't see all the red flags, then I'm sorry, you may think that all lawyers are the same, but not necessarily. So a lot of times the curse is not necessarily the lawyer, is that the person picked the wrong lawyer or forced a situation where there was no case. So they're like, yeah, but you can't argue it. I mean, you could technically argue anything, but the chance that it's going to be successful, that's a different thing, So a lot of times people say, oh, so you can't do anything? I'm like, I can do something. You can generally do something. But is that going to work? No, So you got to be clear with regards to options. Now, if I was a different person, and then you go and be like, another lawyer would be like, oh, of course, I can do this. I can do this. This was going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. And then they tell you what you want to hear. Like, the other guy told me he couldn't do anything, so I'm definitely going to hire you. And then that lawyer stiffs you. Again, bad on the lawyer, but bad on you because you've been looking for advice and you've been told multiple times, hey, don't do this because it's not going to work. And then you finally go to somebody that tells you yes. So it's almost like, oh, so if 50 people tell me no, but one person tells me yes, I'm like, okay, the yes guys got it. And that's the reason why I want to go that route. So I know you see that all the time, in terms of people seeking second opinions or going to the wrong place to find the wrong advice. So what did you tell me? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's heartbreaking many times when people come to you and they may have a good case, but when you see what the previous attorney did, you realize that any relief that they had basically was eliminated because of the result of that particular case. If it starts bad, it'll probably end bad. That's probably that's probably a fact. But you can know, the way the attorney expresses himself to you, which is what you were mentioning, you can know if he's going to be prepared for court. Because one of the worst things that you as an attorney could do is go before a judge and not be prepared for the case. Because not only the attorney is going to look bad, but it's your case, it's the client's case. So the attorney is not the one who's going to end up on jail or paying a high fine or doing the community service, for example. It's going to be you, the client. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that person has everything together. They know what they're talking about. They can go through the entire process with you, so that you have a very clear understanding of what to expect during that process. And that's how basically you can confirm that he actually knows what's going to happen. Because at least for our clients, what we usually try to do, the objective is so that there are no surprises. Mm-hmm. Even if that's not what you want to hear. Maybe you have to spend a couple of days at jail. That's what the statute requires. We fought it. We tried to get less, but you knew it was a possibility. And it's your case. You were the one who committed the act. So that is a possibility. And as long as what we usually find is that as long as the person was aware of that and we explain it thoroughly to them, it's easier to accept. And, they just, pay their debt to society in whichever manner the judge feels is best. But that's, you need to know, that attorney needs to let you know what's gonna happen in a pretty clear and reasonable way that you can understand it. If you don't understand it, you either have to get another attorney or ask more questions.
And I think you just remind me of a story or something that I, with a client I had years ago. And it was really, it sticks to me what the judge told that client one time. So this was at a previous firm I worked for. The client had just kind of fallen off the face of the earth, didn't answer our calls, our letters, nothing. So we're just going to go withdraw. And the client actually showed up to court. So I'm just freaking out. I'm like, okay, so we've been trying to contact you for months. Where have you been? He's like, he didn't have a real excuse. He just said, I'm here and I want you to keep representing me. I was like, oh, okay. So I called my boss at the time. He's like, yeah, just keep representing him. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I mean, we have nothing going on at this point. I'm just going to have to ask for a continuance. So I told the judge, I'm like, Your Honor, I mean, I hate to be the one that throws my client under the bus, but we lost contact with him for a long time. We sent him letters, we called him, and unfortunately we didn't have everything ready for today. So we just need a continuance so that we can do so. And I'm fully expecting the judge to just go off on me. He turns to the client and he's like, sir, you have to understand that at the end of the day, this case is yours.
Exactly.
Your attorney's just here representing you. At the end of the day, you might not get to go home, but your lawyer will. He'll go back to his family. He'll go back to his house and he'll keep on living his life. And I always try to think about that, when you're incredibly stressful, like this day will pass and you'll get to go home at some point if all things go well and everything. But more importantly is the fact that, when people don't see a level of urgency in an attorney, that should be like a red flag. It should be like a curse when the attorney doesn't care about the case as much as you do, or doesn't, engage you as much as you do with regards to your situation, because when you really care, you're going to always go the extra mile for your client, or in terms of sense of duty, you always go the extra mile for your client, However, if you see a lawyer that provides very little details, very little effort, looks disinterested in seeing you, like kind of treats you like a leper, like from far away, like, oh, how are you, Mr. Client? Kind of pats you like, good for you. That is concerning, So you always want to be able to see those, red flags or whatever you want to call it, just signs, with regards to what do I want to look for in terms of a lawyer. So a lot of times the curse is not necessarily a lawyer, it's that just like all the other professions, you just pick the bad one, The other example in terms of bad ones that I want to show you is in terms of clients, not caring. And we're not going to say any names or anything, but I remember years ago, well, I don't know if it was years, but it was a while ago. There was a lawyer that the judge wanted to just release the client, and the lawyer was opposing to that because he was not the one that brought up the request to release the client. So I don't know what kind of insanity happened there that the person ended up getting released, but it was because the judge argued more with the lawyer, because the lawyer was opposing that his client be released because he was not the one that requested it. But the government and the judge were both like, yeah, we're okay that he's released. You are the only person in here preventing that from happening. And I'm sitting there in the back just looking like, really? This guy's supposed to defend his client and he's just objecting to his client being released. Like, that should be a reason for, taking your license away. But again, you get what you pay for. You get what you ask for. And this person just, I don't know how he ended up with this lawyer, but I'm never going to forget that day. I was like, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever seen. Like, the one person who's supposed to be arguing for the client to be released is actually arguing for the client not to be released. And not because he thought the client was in danger or anything, just because he was so proud about the fact that everything needs to go through him, that he was like, this is not my motion to release my client, so I forbid you from issuing this order to the judge at that. I mean, it's insanity, So in that situation, absolutely, the lawyer was a curse.
Exactly, exactly. Because sometimes that right there you don't get a bigger red flag than that. Because usually you should, as an attorney, you should just take this as a gift, and you have to identify that gift. And it seems easy enough, it's like your objective is to get your client out of detention or jail. And you're getting that, so who cares where it's coming from? Just roll with it,
right?
So that's really concerning, but things you see.
Yeah. So long story short, we believe attorneys are a blessing, but of course we would. But I think it really just comes down to, answering our question is, it comes down to you, who you pick, how you pick. Find testimonies from other people that have used the attorney that you're considering, look at reviews. And honestly, I just think it's more like just have a conversation. Like, I've had people literally walk in and just literally say, I know about my case. I know what you can do because there's only one thing I can do. I want to know about you. Tell me about you, who you are, where you came from. Like, try to understand who that person, the individual is that you're trying to decide whether you want to hire them or not. If you're smart enough and you know where your case is going, great. He or she should still then review it. But, maybe the idea is just to meet them and see if this is somebody you can work with, somebody that you can, relate to. I'm not saying like go have a beer with, because a lot of people say that, if I don't think I can have a beer with so-and-so, then why would I hire them? Not necessarily like that. Just that person is going to be, you're going to put in his or her hands your life in most parts. So you want to make sure that you get a good vibe from them on the professional aspect of things or business of things. So I've seen attorneys that are super professional, then in their personal life, they're insane. Or vice versa. They're insane in their, personal life. And then when they go to school, they're like, to court, straight as an arrow. So.
Agreed. So I have a different approach for this that I want to talk about. I want your input also. So sometimes you could have a blessing of an attorney, a great attorney. However, it can become a curse because your case, which he can handle, however, there are other parts of your case that can get affected by how the original case turns out.
Right.
Perfect example. I know where I'm going with this. Perfect example is when you don't have legal status in the United States and you are before a criminal court. I've seen cases where the charges were pretty bad. I'm talking kidnapping, rape of a child, stuff like that. I don't know I don't know the details. But when you actually see the disposition, the negotiated plea, basically, the attorney did a great job. He reduced everything, but he still had to plead guilty to something that on his immigration case totally disqualifies him of every relief.
Yeah.
And maybe at the time he didn't know. Of course, he didn't know. And then that attorney, who is a great attorney, he did a great job. However, because he doesn't have the knowledge of the immigration court system and reliefs, then it becomes, from on one end, it was a blessing because he got your charges reduced, and you ended pleading guilty to something of a lesser charge, which under any other circumstance, if you're a U.S. citizen, for example, is a great deal. You even avoided jail. But then when you need it for your immigration case, then that particular blessing turns into a curse because now you can't qualify for a relief that otherwise you would have qualified. No. And that becomes a blessing. So, curse, I'm sorry. So those are the things that you have to also take into consideration. Not only that he's a great attorney or that you have, a great relationship with him, which was what you were speaking before, because some, large law firms are specialized in specific areas of law. And, but laws can can affect other areas that you may not be aware at that time, or even the attorney is not aware at that time. So you really have to do your homework on what you really need. If you're an immigrant and you have a criminal case, the logical thing you would think would be to hire an attorney who at least knows immigration or something about it, at least the minimum, regarding if you're pleading guilty to that charge, if it'll affect you or not on your immigration case, which is also actually one of the waivers that you agree to when you plead guilty to a charge. The judge makes sure that if you're not a U.S. citizen, that you are aware that this can affect your immigration case. So it's even told to you at the time before you enter your plea.
Yeah. So I think it's a balancing act, just understanding that just like everything else, there's good people, there's bad people, there's good lawyers, there's bad lawyers, there's good dentists, there's great dentists, and there's terrible dentists that feels like they're pulling the teeth out of a horse. So, or from an alligator and whatnot. So again, it's just like on the world that we live in, lawyers is just the same thing as, every other service that you get. Look at reviews, ask other people, go meet them. Like, that's how you get a good lawyer, and that's how you make sure that the lawyer is blessing your life rather than a curse and something that affects you, sometimes in potentially liberty threatening ways. So you want to make sure you always try to balance it out and, make sure that it's not always that they fall on either side of the spectrum at all times. It's just like everything else in life, right? Any final thoughts, Gadiel?
Well, just, do your research. Don't wait until there's an emergency to get an attorney. And as you mentioned earlier, I like that a lot. You can have an attorney. Many attorneys, may know a couple of areas of law. But if they don't know about that particular one, they will be honest enough with you to let you know. And the best thing would be to get a reference from them so that you don't have to start cold again your search for a good attorney. And I do that. We do that a lot with our clients. We even have a list of the attorneys that based on the area of law. We refer them out if it is needed and if they ask for our advice on that. So, and usually it works out for them.
Yeah. So again, if you ever have any questions, feel free to write a message underneath this video, because we're going to try to post this on YouTube with regards to the video. On the other social media aspects, it will be just the audio. You can find this podcast in iTunes, Spotify, as well as other multiple podcast platforms. Okay. And you can just reach us out through there. We're pretty active in regards to making sure that, we get to your messages as soon as possible. Okay. So how about we end on a couple of extra jokes? Like,
yes, please.
So what's the difference between a mosquito and a lawyer?
I don't know.
One is a blood-sucking parasite. The other is an insect. I mean, this is hurtful. It's just some brutal stuff,
It's not fair.
One more. At this point, I'm just kind of get it. I mean, what do you call a smiling, sober, courteous person at a bar association convention? Like a lawyer's meeting.
I don't know.
The caterer. If you see a lawyer on a bicycle, why don't you swerve to hit him? Because it might be your bicycle. I mean, this is awful stuff. Wow. Last one. This is probably the most painful one. Where can you find a good lawyer? In the cemetery. And with that, we end our second podcast, because I don't think I can take any more of this humiliation. So you guys have a great afternoon, and we're always here for you if you have any other questions, or if you have any other lawyer jokes, feel free to send them to me. Hopefully they're not that cruel, because I'm a little hurt. But thank you for your attention, and have a great day. Bye.
Bye.